Listen up, fellow Democrats. Fight fake news and lies with facts. Save our democracy from right-wing hypocrisy. Keep our integrity, embrace our diversity. Whenever we're down, we always come back. So listen up, Democrats.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Progressive Oregon, a live stream broadcast show on progressive issues in Oregon. My name is Larry Taylor. I'm your host, along with Betsy Cunningham, who is monitoring our chat line. Today, our topic is campaign finance reform, and we have a very interesting show. We have two guests joining us from Germany, and then we have someone from from Oregon specifically, who's been working on these issues, and we're going to talk about the difference between what goes on in Europe and what is going on here, and how we're going to address the problem. Then we'll talk a little bit about upcoming events here in Oregon, and that will be today's show. So I'll introduce our guests. So from Europe, we have Bjorn and Marcus. Welcome, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Hi.
Good morning.
And then from Oregon, we have David Delk. Welcome, David.
Yeah, good morning.
And David is the chair of the Progressive Party. It's one of the minor parties in Oregon, but he's been working on these issues for a number of years. Mm-hmm. So we're going to start out with Marcus and Bjorn talking about how campaign finance is handled in Europe. We were talking about this a little bit earlier, and what's really interesting is that the whole system in Germany, of course, was set up in 1949 after World War II, and the United States helped design it because we were one of the countries in control of Western Germany. And then when Eastern Germany merged into Western Germany, they adopted that. But they have a very different structure to the way they elect their officials because they wanted to prevent someone from, a personality cult product like Hitler from being elected directly again. So that's why their system runs a little bit differently than us, and then that has implications on how campaigns are financed. So I'll turn it over to you, Bjorn and Marcus. Walk us through how Germany handles this.
All right. Well, to start with, you're absolutely right that the US helped in 1949 to build our new government system. And the first question which comes into my mind is, why didn't the American put their own system maybe for Germany? Well, the thing is that they wanted to prevent that another authoritarian politician like Hitler would come into power, and this why they created the parliamentary democracy we have now. So, and this is already the first striking point which differs our system, which is different from your system, because we do not elect single persons which are running for a party. No, we are only voting for parties here. And so this means, you can see it here in Article 21.1 in our German Constitution, that parties contribute to the forming of the political will of the people and are accountable to publicly inform about the allocation of their resources and property. So this is, in my opinion, another difference in both systems, because the American parties are run privately, and in this case, there are the German Constitution supports parties, but also sets limits what parties can do. They are supervised in what they are doing. They cannot do what they want, as we, for example, saw this in the last elections, and The other thing is, the question of financing. How are parties financing themselves? And here in Germany, we have different levels. The finances are coming from the members. Every member has to pay a certain fee per month or per year. It depends on. In my case, I'm a member of Die Partei, and I only have to pay 10 euros per year. It is different with other parties. Bjorn, for example, what do you have to pay in your per month? I think it is for you.
Yeah, exactly. I pay 2.5 euros per month, but that is really the amount you have to pay with the Social Democrats in Germany is based on your yearly income. So if you actually do earn more, then you have to pay more. For example, my uncle, who is part of that party, he has to pay like 22 euros per month.
This is also the difference in both systems. I see contributions, of course, are another point. They get donations, contributions in financial form. Public resources are also a very important point, and this is what I know from discussions. Most Americans would also want that the party campaigning should be completely paid by public resources, and to have them supervised somehow. The public resources in Germany, how much does a party get out of it? It depends on past election results and how important a party is in a region or in Germany at all, depending on the elections. It is depending on the membership fees, self-generated revenues, and contribution, and of course property assets a party has, and all this makes a sum, a so-called voting money in the end when it comes to elections. Of course, it is also considered to be important. If we can see here in 2012, for example, the complete amount for all parties which were registered there at this moment was 150.8 million, what they got out of the public hand, public resources. And this is an impressive number, but it is also a public number, and everybody knows about this, and they have to report about what they are doing with the money. And in the last election we had in the past year, when it comes to what a single vote is worth for a party, when it comes to this, there is this rule that up to 4 million votes, if a party reaches 4 million votes, they get €1 per vote. And what goes over this amount is only of course, it's only 83 euro cents here in Germany. But you can imagine the big parties, this is a huge amount of money for them. So, yeah, this is the basic stuff we thought about is important to show up the differences. And yeah, Björn, do you have anything to add to this?
Well, the real difference here is, of course, that we elect parties and not people. And the thing here is that you cannot go to take one campaign and put a lot of money into that campaign like the Koch brothers are doing, and you just what you have to do is basically give the money to the party and they will distribute it or won't.
Yeah. I may add that when we go to elections, we do not elect, for example, Angela Merkel here. We only elect the party, and this is and Angela Merkel in this case is the top candidate of the party, and the parliament later votes for the Bundeskanzler. And we are strictly voting for parties here.
So that's really interesting, because most of our money is spent on campaigns, and the campaigns are based on personalities, and so you have the pro campaign ads, and then you have the negative campaigning where you slander each other. How does that work in Germany if you don't have anyone to attack? What do you do?
Okay, Björn?
Well, we have a lot of people to attack, of course, but what you really do is, if you, I think Marcus had in that slide, this election cycle. If you take the last election cycle in the U.S., that was basically like a year and a half, the whole election cycle with all those primaries and all that. The election cycle in Germany, where you can do kind of like campaign ads on TV and everything, it's about 6 weeks long only, and that is regulated by law, that you cannot do like some kind of election propaganda or whatever before that time.
Yeah. Maybe John can show us slide number 13, where we can see that it is ruled by law what's going on with campaigning, and especially with radio and television broadcast. and this is handled very, very strict, and the radio and television promotions last only a very short time. This is another remarkable point. We are, as Björn said, we are not having primaries and stuff like this, which takes months or half a year or even longer. This is completely unknown to us. For our election time, which is already, in my opinion, it makes me angry to see all the politicians' faces in the streets every day on big posters, etc. But it's bearable because it only lasts 6 weeks.
So are the campaigns then basically policy campaigns where the citizens of Germany say, "Oh, we want to go in this direction," and then they vote for?
These are the parties which are campaigning with their topics they think would interest enough people to give them their vote.
It had been. I mean, I think like in the last millennium, it was basically only topic-based campaigns. It had been since the Schröder campaign in 1989. They started to do like with. Use certain people as an advertisement for their party, whatever. The reigning party right now, the CDU, the Conservatives, do that with Merkel. They say, "You know me, vote for me. You know what you get." That's basically one of their main topics, actually. Yeah. But most parties use actually topics as their try to convince people to vote for them.
Yeah. Björn is absolutely right. Some politicians, but this is not only Merkel typical. Helmut Kohl was also famous for this, to come up with a slogan, "Everyone knows me." After 12 years, of course, everybody knew him, and it came to the point it was enough. And normally it is about the topics which people are moved by.
So what we have that makes this so difficult is the Bill of Rights and the guarantee of freedom of speech, and so much of this is translated back to that right. Why isn't that used to expand the campaign duration in Germany?
Good question. As far as I know, as I read, it was a unique decision of all parties not to extend election campaigns over what is needed. And so, Björn, do you have exact dates, historical dates?
No, it's based on the 1949 forming of our constitution.
Yeah, I think the thought behind it was I can imagine that it was also connected with the Hitler regime, not to give ground. Even there are no democratic parties for campaigning, but to address the serious problems which have to be solved, and to put the aspect on a functioning government, and not so much on election periods or campaign periods. It is only I assume this on, but I think.
And with the First Amendment thing, basically, we of course also have freedom of speech here. Nobody is telling you cannot give an interview in some kind of newspaper where you kind of like promote your positions and bring yourself into position that you want to have a big part in within the next election, whatever.
Yeah.
So of course you can do that, but like. How can I put it? The money only flows within those 6 weeks.
Yeah,
of course, you can do some kind of campaigning before that via media, via interviews, via some YouTube shows, whatever.
Yeah, I think, of course, the campaigning thought is always behind it, but it is meant from the law that it is that the politicians should more inform than to go on campaigning. And exactly this we are having here 365 days a year, that we have our discussions here in Germany, and this is not that politics only happen within the 6 weeks of campaigning.
And of course,
hey Bjorn,
sorry, Marcus.
I just want to say you summed up the entirety of the German system in one sentence. The money only flows for 6 weeks.
Yes,
End
exactly.
of story.
Yes,
Where
exactly.
here it flows endlessly.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And if we go further with slide 13, there's another important matter that they are also the size of the advertisement also limited here, and they have to be agreed upon, that that they are followed, that this rule is followed, and they get not unlimited advertisement slots. No, they mainly get only a handful from each broadcasting station, and that's it, and there is no third party in it who says, okay, I buy now a slot and put a promo video for my favorite party in it. This is strictly forbidden here in Germany. No third party is allowed to do this. And I think this is a huge difference regarding the fact how many millions of money goes into election campaigns in America.
And also time, isn't it? I mean, I always hear that state elected people use half of the time to call their donors and try to get even more money and prepare for the next campaign. Just half the time getting money and half the time only working in their parliaments. That's one thing, of course, that people here in Germany wanted to get rid of. They wanted them to only work on the campaigns for 6 weeks, but the rest of the time, really, of those 4 years, work on politics.
You're absolutely right. It would be an outcry here in Germany if we would know that our elected politicians would only work half a day and then spend the rest of the day by calling donors and begging for money. This would be completely unacceptable.
And do you not have negative campaigning? Like we had the John Kerry Swift boating thing. Do you have that kind of thing going on?
Yeah, we have it, but I think not so harsh as in America, because there's a certain law that the negative campaigning has not go too far.
Yeah, but I think, how can I put it? We are right now in 1988 on your scale of negative campaigning. I mean, in the way I saw the campaigning in America was it got worse and worse and worse every election cycle. And basically, we are right now in 1988. We used to be better, but it's starting. The cycle of viciousness is starting here too, and I think we are getting worse.
Yeah, and negative campaigning. You can openly campaign negatively, or you can do this between the lines, and the effect would be the same.
It's subtlety.
Do you get like the Jaws shark music in the background and all that kind of stuff? We had for a right-wing party in the 80s. I think it was the Republicans or the National Party of Germany. They used the Sergio Leone theme, Ennio Morricone from what I don't know. Once upon a time in the West.
Yeah.
They used this harmonica solo, to say there are too many strangers here in Germany and they're threatening us and all this crap. We are listening today also, We are hearing this today again. All this crap. Anyway.
Wow. Betsy, any questions on the line?
No, I don't see any questions.
These Germans, yeah.
People are dumbstruck. David, did you have any questions of the German system?
David is mute.
Well, I am struck by several things that you said. Number one, the limiting it to 6 weeks so that you don't have these endless campaigns that seem to occupy our political people here in the United States, although most of the population pays no attention to it whatsoever. It's largely wasted. It would be quite refreshing to have a period of time where this is where and when you focus on these questions of what our policy should be. And that's the other thing that I particularly notice in what you're talking about is that it's not the personalities, it's the policies that are talked about. And so often in the United States, we don't talk about policies. We talk about personalities.
Yeah.
And so.
Yeah, I can agree. I was very surprised. For example, when possible names came up, like Oprah Winfrey, because she made a quite good speech. Or Dwayne Johnson, who suddenly, because he's an actor and he's famous and has money, and I was missing in all these discussions. For people who were cheering for them, okay, but what do they stand for? What are their political issues? And this is the normal question for a German.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and unfortunately, and it's getting much worse here. I mean, this is particularly with Trump now having gotten the top office, then it's cascading on down. So we're seeing more and more of this personality kind of candidates where we don't know. You have some kind of general feeling that a candidate may be liberal or maybe conservative, but they're not very explicit about it, and we don't really know. And this is not a good development for sure.
Yeah, can agree on it.
Yeah.
And because of our two-phase system, we have candidates like Newt Buehler, who has to pander to the right wing of the Republican Party to make it through the primary, and then after he locked up the primary, now he has to run back to the center and soften all of his positions so he could be appealing to the rest of Oregon.
Yeah. And as he's doing that, of course, he's getting $500,000 contributions from Nike, and so we're not sure where that takes us, but we know that he's certainly one of the corporate candidates.
Yeah.
So let's switch to Oregon, and so Oregon has this really interesting history of both trying to put controls on term limits and campaign financing, and it's not been successful because the concept of free speech has been broadly interpreted in the Oregon Constitution in addition to what's in the Bill of Rights. Tell us the history of campaign finance, and as you can recollect, David, here in Oregon.
Yeah, so at four different times in Oregon's history, we have had limits on campaign contributions, and those limits have always been either removed by the Oregon Supreme Court and been declared as unconstitutional, or they have been removed, eliminated by the Oregon legislature. So it's a combination of both. The most recent effort to establish limits here was in 2006 when we had two measures on the ballot. These were initiative measures. We collected signatures for them. One was a constitutional amendment to amend the Oregon Constitution to allow limits on campaign contributions and expenditures. The second one was a bill that had actual limits in it. And so the result of that was that the electorate did not approve the constitutional amendment, but did approve the limits. And what we always find is that when limits are on the ballot, they always pass. People actually like limits. They understand the value of limited campaign contributions. But then we run up against either the legislature, who has been elected with the present system, doesn't really want to limit campaign contributions, or we run up against the Oregon Supreme Court, which has interpreted the free speech provisions of the Oregon Constitution as saying that no, you cannot limit campaign contributions in the state of Oregon. So we did pass the limits in 2006 statewide. So Oregon, usually we say that Oregon is one of 4 states with no limits. Well, that's not entirely true. We did, in fact, pass limits. They're just not enforced. And so in 2006, we have this really great set of limits it would have been the strongest limits in the United States. But the Democrats, who have controlled the Secretary of State and the Attorney General's office for all these years since then, have both refused to enforce the measure that we passed. So we are presently, well, let's see. We started gathering signatures for a new constitutional amendment that we had hoped would be on the ballot in November of this year. But our opponents tied that up in the court system so that there was not enough time to actually gather the signatures. So we have now filed for the November 2020 ballot a new constitutional amendment that there's a requirement in Oregon that you gather 1,000 valid signatures for the Secretary of State to write the draft ballot title. We did that. So the upshot of all this is that we will have about 1.5 to 2 years to actually gather the signatures to qualify this for the November 2020 ballot. So we're looking forward to actually getting that done. So that's what we're doing at the state level. At the same time, at the Portland city level, we are currently gathering signatures for a set of limitations on campaign contributions. And these would match limits that we have already passed at the Multnomah County level in November 2016. And so these would match. So the largest metropolitan area in the Portland, in the state of Oregon, will then have limits on campaign contributions, which will be pretty strict. One of the things that I quite frequently hear is like, well, if Oregon is one of 4 states with no limits, then what does that say about the states that do have limits? And I point out that there are lots of states that have limits. Many of those states have limits with huge loopholes, so they might as well not have them at all. So that's kind of where we're at right now with that in the Portland area and at the state level.
So what are you doing differently with the City of Portland measure that will make it able to survive a court challenge that overturned the Multnomah County limit?
Yeah, so let me just point out that the Multnomah County measure passed with almost 90% of the vote, and that's kind of like unheard of. When we have limits on the ballot, they are very successful. People really do want them, and it doesn't matter whether people are Democrats or Republicans or independent party members. People like and understand the need for having limits on campaign contributions. After that passed in Multnomah County, it was challenged and went to the court system, and is still in the court system. Judge Block in the circuit court declared that measure to be unconstitutional under the Oregon Constitution, and we are in the process now of taking that to the next level in the court system. Our ultimate goal is to take that to the Oregon Supreme Court, have them relook at this question about limiting campaign contributions within the state, and hopefully have them come to a different conclusion. I would point out that the Oregon Constitution's provisions for protecting free speech are no different than the provisions in 26 other state constitutions, and those states all have limits on campaign contributions. We think that now, with the present Oregon Supreme Court, that we would have a very different decision than we've had in the past. So we'll see how that all works out. With regard to the city of Portland, if the city of Portland, if we get it on the ballot in November of this year, which is our aim, then and if we then approve it, which I'm sure that we will, then the city of Portland would join our suit or our court procedure with Multnomah County. So we'd have the largest population-wise county in the state, as well as the largest city population in the state, all unanimously or in agreement that we need to have limits on campaign contributions. And while the city would be able to join the county in that argument, the court system, of course, is set up so that it's not necessarily affected by popular opinion, but still there is some weight which is given to the fact that we'd have such a large number of people in the state demanding that we limit campaign contributions.
And you said that there were groups that opposed the current measure and had stalled it with ballot challenges. Who was doing that? And I mean, I'm curious who's opposed to this.
So the people that challenged at the county level were the realtors, and there were three groups, and I'm sorry I can't remember who. And I remember the realtors and the Portland. What would be the Chamber of Commerce? I am striking a blank right now as to what their name is. And then another group came in very late in that process, which was directly tied with Koch brothers. And so they got involved. I believe that the judge said that because they hadn't met the deadline for being a party to that challenge, that they were not actually allowed to participate. So, so that was good. But irrespective, the Koch brothers most definitely had taken an interest in what was happening here in Portland and in Multnomah County.
Great.
Yeah. We always hope that we'll escape attention, but that's not the case. But so at the state level, our measure that we had aimed to have on the November 2018 ballot was challenged by the Libertarian Party. Not a surprise there. They really don't like to have any kind of limits on money whatsoever. But also by Trent Lutz, who was I believe he was a former chair of the Democratic Party in the state of Oregon.
He wasn't chair, he was executive director.
Executive director, I'm sorry. Thanks for that correction. And so it's always interesting to see who opposes us. And in Oregon, labor unions have opposed limiting campaign contributions and have tied our measures up in the past. And the Democratic Party has also, and it's illuminating, I think, to realize that Democrats always talk about how they favor limited campaign contributions, but when they actually get down to push and shove, they don't approve them. And in fact, they quite frequently oppose them. So that's the case. We know that if it weren't them, well, then the Libertarian parties, or we would have some Koch brother kinds of organizations that would step up to challenge us also. So this is most definitely a battle between with regard to how we fund elections and candidates, and whether those funds should come from small contributions from people like you and I, Larry, or whether they should come from people like Phil Knight and Nike and some of these other land developers and timber interests and so forth that frequently are the large contributors presently.
So Bjorn and Marcus, it sounds like we have this corporations or people problem here where that allows them to demand their right to contribute. Is there any limits on who can give money to the parties in Germany?
Yeah, there are. And for this, we can show slide number 8. And Bjorn, do you want to take over for this?
Slide number 8. No, please.
Okay. All right. Okay. So we have also laws which define who is allowed to give contributions of any kind. For example, we are not allowed, or parties are not allowed to take contributions from bodies governed by the public law, party fractions, political foundations, incorporate societies, and others. And non-EU countries, of course, but to explain this, if you're, for example, a German living in the US, having a business in the US, you're still a German, and then you can, of course, send your money to Germany for a certain party if you want so. And there are some other exceptions which would go too far right to explain right now. Occupational unions is another important factor in that they are not allowed to give contributions to parties. They are absolutely excluded, just like corporations, which are owned completely or in parts by public authorities. All of this is forbidden, and it goes even so far that the anonymous contributors for donations higher than 500 euros are not allowed by parties to be taken. So, for example, if you're a party treasurer, just like Bjorn, and open your, maybe you can tell it, Bjorn. What happens if you find an envelope with 1,000 euros?
You have to call the police and you have to hand that in. Yeah.
So you are not allowed to keep this money because it would hurt the law. And yes, and as Bjorn says, he's a treasurer of his party, and if this case happens, he has to go to the police with the money and has to deliver the complete 1,000 euros, and not only 500, but the complete sum there.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing here is like if you're like having like some kind of fest wherever, and you just say, well, we want to if people would like to contribute like a small amount of money, you just give them an envelope around, and somebody is just putting in 5 euros, 10 euros, whatever. This amount cannot be higher than 500 euros because you don't know who actually put in the money. If it's more than 500 euro, then you cannot accept that money for your party.
Yes, and of course, as a last point, forbidden are any contributions with the expectation to get any service in return. Of course,
Yeah, we have that too.
This finishes my sentence. I don't have to go any further. But the interesting thing is, on the other hand, what happens if those private persons or companies donate money to German parties? At first, there is the law says, if we go back quickly to slide 5. Hold on, where was it? Slide 5? It was slide 7. Sorry. That natural persons and corporate bodies are allowed to donate unlimited amount of money and even multiple times. But the difference is that it has to be published, as explained earlier. From 50,000 euros up, they have to inform the president of the lower house here in Germany about this, and they have to undertake other steps also. The question is, in how far, if we go now to slide 11, please. I'm sorry that I'm rushing this. Here we can see from the elections in 2013, the contributors and donations, and they are listed. And you can see that, for example, BMW here in Germany, they also donated to FDP, to the Liberals, to the Social Democrats, and to the Christian Socialist Union, another conservative party in connection with the CDU. And they can see that they are giving money, maybe not equal sums, but they are trying to donate every important party which is in the game somehow, to prevent the impression that there are only one-sided benefiting one party, and this is, for example, for the big players in the game like BMW, as you can see, Daimler AG, and and you can see on the right side they have to document when the money arrives exactly, and you can see private persons donating much money. You can see the companies donating multiple times. Yeah, but this is all covered and published, so everyone is aware what's going on here.
I think it's important, Marcus. I just want to break in right here. I think it's really important that everybody understands that unlike in America where the parties are dominant, and there's only two of them that are dominant, your parties, and please get the specifics in here, they have to form coalitions to get things done. No one party can actually make something happen. They have to work with other parties, and this is why the corporations spread their money out across multiple parties. Right?
Yeah, if they don't have the majority of votes, of course, they have to build coalitions, and this is meanwhile the usual way how policy is done here in Germany, because no party has enough power anymore to be the only in government, and of course, and this of course is the other difference. If you have to deal with other parties, if you have a coalition, for example, right now with conservatives and the Social Democrats, you have to deal with this. You have to find agreements. You have to talk with each other. And you don't. There's no way to sit back and say no. We want to do it like we want to do, and we are not moving anyway. Unfortunately, we have this kind of situation right now here in Germany somehow, but this is another topic and would lead too far. Björn, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think you make it sound a little bit too good, because
okay.
Still, there is the possibility that you can give to parties an unlimited amount of money and unlimited amount of times. And we saw that in some kind of way in 2013, where the EU tried to have stricter environmental laws for cars, for the car emissions, which was actually started by Germany. And BMW and the owner family of BMW, the family Quandt, gave $800,000 to the CDU, the reigning party of Merkel. And suddenly the German government was not in favor of this anymore. I think there is some correlation, especially if you look at the conservatives. If you look at the amount of donations they do get, it's about 1/5 of all their money. And if the neoliberal party, the FDP, it's actually 1/3 of all their money they have is donations. And of course, you will have parties that are basically sticking to that and only promoting companies and really not really being there for the people, what you can see in America, but it's not the norm here.
Yeah, exactly.
So getting back to Oregon, David, it sounds like the measure that you're targeting for 2020 is the major effort going on. Is that correct?
Oh, yes. Statewide, that would be the major effort that's going on. Right now, what's most important to us is getting this measure in the city of Portland qualified and on the ballot. So we are gathering signatures for that. And if anyone who is watching here wants to participate in that, I would invite you to go to our website at www.honest-elections.com/landing is the homepage, and there's links on there for reading the initiative and for volunteering or for electronically signing as a voter to sign the initiative itself. So that is something that we do have here in Oregon. We do have the ability to sign initiatives online. And so I invite anyone who is registered to vote in the city of Portland to go ahead and do that. Again, that's www.honest-elections.com/landing.
And what process did you follow to write the statewide legislation? Who contributed to that?
Well, we have had a group of people that have been working on this for 15 plus years, and so the groups that have worked on it have been the Alliance for Democracy, the Oregon Progressive Party, the Pacific Green Party, and others. So they're the ones who have actually promoted and gotten these things on the ballot. And the specific person who has written these in the past has been the attorney Dan Meek, and he has written, as far as I know, he's written all of these. He certainly wrote the measures 46 and 47 that were on the ballot 10 years ago. He wrote the county one, sort of, and then he's written this one for the city elections as well.
Okay. Oh, excellent. Betsy, did we have any questions on the line?
Yeah, a while ago, Louise Squires asked, any suggestions on how you can get from where they are in Germany or in the U.S. system to more like the one in Germany?
Wow. This, okay.
That seems like there's an ocean separating us.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think it would, in the first place, it would demand to change the system, from the presidential system to parliamentary system.
Mm-hmm.
And saying this is done. This is not imaginable.
I think the real step would be to limit how long really campaigns can be. Have a fixed amount of time, whatever, 8 weeks, maybe 9 weeks for primaries and 6 weeks for the general election. And I think that would be the real thing. If you take this year-long campaigning out of it, then I think a lot of money would be saved by that. And I think you can do that also in the presidential system there. The reason what I understand is that the freedom of speech argument that is always brought up, and me as a German, I don't really understand why it wouldn't be a freedom of speech if you limit that to a certain amount of time, because you're still able to put your opinion out there, even if it's in a limited amount of time.
I think it also depends that America is much bigger than Germany, And, this is maybe another factor. Maybe it is not another valid factor anymore in the times of internet, and this is questionable. We can discuss about it, but I think in the first place it was because America is just that big,
Yeah, but they don't move by wagons anymore, do you?
No, of course not. This is what I'm saying. We can discuss it, but it's still valid,
Yeah, I think one of the things that we could do certainly would be to start doing proportional representation. And currently, I don't know that any place in the United States do we use a system of proportional representation, but that would make some difference. The limited campaigns in terms of how long they last, I don't really know that we can do that. I would sure like to see that. It would certainly have a lot of advantages, but and then using instant runoff voting or ranked choice voting, where you rank candidates by your preference for them, would be another good, excellent reform that we could do here. And there is some movement for doing that. The state of Maine just conducted statewide elections using instant runoff voting. And here in Oregon, Benton County approved using instant runoff voting / ranked choice voting. a few years ago. I don't think they've actually used it yet, but they're in the process of figuring out actually how to do that. So there is some movement, but like I said, the ocean is deep and the current is strong. So
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, there's a lot of hurdles. I am really surprised to hear, though, that in Germany that corporations are allowed to contribute to campaigns. I'm frankly surprised at that. Well, one of the things here in these measures that we've been talking about here in Oregon that we do is we do ban corporate contributions to candidates running for offices.
Yeah.
That really seems really fundamental, and I know that ultimately those bans will run up against Citizens United, which will give us another opportunity to relook at that court case, that court decision. But the banning the corporate contributions is really, really important, and so I'm really surprised that hasn't been done in Europe or at least in Germany.
Well, Citizens United, as I understand it, is that is saying that the corporations are people, right?
Yeah.
And corporations here in Germany actually are people. You have the natural people, and then you have the judicial people.
Yeah.
They have, of course, different rights and different. They have some of the rights of the naturalized people, but they are people in a way of a legal entity.
Yeah.
And, you can sue them as you can sue somebody else. That was the basic thinking behind that.
Yeah. Well, here in the Citizens United is based on the court-created doctrine that corporations are people and have many of the same rights that we do, including freedom of speech. And so prior to Citizens United, corporations were banned from participating in candidate elections. And Citizens United opened that up to say that corporations could participate in candidate elections as long as they didn't coordinate those campaigns directly with the candidate. And of course, we immediately saw that they would structure it so that didn't happen. But when you have the campaign manager of a particular candidate then going over to working on an independent campaign, well, they may not afterwards talk and coordinate as such, but that campaign manager certainly knows what the candidate wants. So that was kind of.
So, Betsy, any final questions on the line?
No, I don't see any questions.
Okay. David, any final thoughts you'd like to share as we wind this up?
Well, I think the most important thing that we can do to have a people's democracy in Oregon and in the United States is to limit the campaign contributions. And so we have this effort going on in Oregon. I invite people to go to our website, www.honest-elections.com, and then /landing, and figure out how you can participate. And particularly here in Portland right now, we have this July 6th deadline coming up for turning in the signatures for our limit measure. And so I invite people to at least go and individually sign that sheet or contact us, find out how you can gather more signatures for us. This is all very doable, but it takes everybody getting on board and participating in the action.
David, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been great.
Thank you. I'm very pleased to be here. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Marcus and Bjorn, always fascinating to see what happens in other parts of the world. So thank you so much for the effort you put into today's presentation.
You're welcome. I hope you enjoyed it.
Jaw dropping.
And thank you, everybody in the audience, for being here. And please share
Yeah.
this so that we can get this out to more people.
So going on to what's happening in the 2020 plan, we convened last week and laid out the schedule of what we're doing. John, please go to slide 21. What we're doing is we're coordinating everyone in an effort to improve the quality of a democracy in Oregon. So we've laid out a timeline through 2020. In the next couple of weeks, well, next week we'll be discussing the criteria that we'll be using for assessing the current elections in 2019 and 2020. And then we're going to follow, this is on the next slide, 22. We're going to follow that with discussions on, we're going to start with the Senate and talk about which positions there that'll be up in 2020 that we might focus our attention on. Then we're going to talk about House Districts 1 through 30. And then the following week, we're going to talk about House Districts 31 through 60. And then the final week, we'll talk about other elected positions in Oregon. And that'll take us through July. And then in August, we're going to start the candidate search. So we're writing our criteria. We are doing an analysis of where we want to focus our attention. And then we'll be looking for candidates to fill the slots from August to November. So that's what's going on there. If you would like to join the effort, you can do so by going to advancementofdemocracy.org and joining. There's basically 5 things that you can get involved with. Just indicate which ones you would like to participate in, and we will pull you into the discussion. Also happening this week is that we are kicking off our studies of democratic practices and parliamentary procedure. So we are forming a what they call a group within the National Association of Parliamentarians. We have over 40 people who have expressed interest in studying this stuff outside of the Portland metro area. You know, it's fairly easy in Portland to find groups to study this material with. But if you are in, Salem or Bend or Jackson County or Baker County, it's a bit more difficult getting together like-minded people to study the material. And so we will be tying everyone together through the miracle of the internet. And we have our first 4 topics lined up. The first one will be how to run a meeting, getting down to basics. We really encourage people who are sitting on elected county commissions and city councils who are not familiar with what their rights are as a member of those bodies. I think you will find this material fascinating. We've just had 2 instances where people have allowed their rights to be taken away from them. We have people that are being banned from participating in meetings because they show up late, and these are decisions made in not by the majority of the people, but by committees, and that is not allowed in parliamentary procedure. But if people don't know what their rights are, then they can't demand them. So we are now off and running for the general election. The August 28th is the last day to file. So in addition to the legislative positions that are going on now, there's a number of cities that are electing their mayors and their city councilors, and we're always looking for people to run for those offices as well. It's not healthy to have unopposed elections, and we encourage people to run because what we need to do is build our farm team so that we have a good bench to draw from when we look for people to run for higher offices. Anything you'd like to add, Betsy, John?
No.
Well, I wanted to say real quick, thank you. This was a phenomenal discussion. And to let everybody know that Larry went ahead and got the solo modems. So we will have upstream capabilities real soon. Thank you, Larry. Everybody say thank you, Larry. And everybody donate a few bucks to help cover the cost monthly. Thank you. Yes, and thanks to the President Trump, we will have endless material to televise over the coming years. I think there will be protests on a weekly basis, and we will be there showing everyone what's going on. And that's the point out there. We want to unify the progressive movement. We're starting with Oregon, but it needs to be a national thing. So if you're in touch with progressive leadership, please reach out to us at info.uphillmedia.org. Thank you. What's the song?
And that's it for today's show. What is our exiting song?
Betsy, did you pick this?
I picked the song, but I don't have the rundown in front of me because when I rebooted my computer.
It's the Public Campaign Finance song by Jim Terr. Jim Terr?
Yeah, it was from 2011. It's about the cost of public financing.
All right. Well, we're going to check out that song. Give me a minute here. And that's it, Larry. Thank you so much, everybody. Great job.
Join us next week for our next exploration of a hot topic.
Yeah, and have a nice Sunday.
Dear Congressperson, won't you please explain how you can take big money to finance your campaign and not feel more beholden to the fat cats with the dough than to us folks who elected you? I'd really like to know. Yeah, just between us humans, do you really have time to think when your survival requires you to always schmooze and drink with the folks who give you money for your TV ads and such on the airwaves that at one time were considered the public trust? They roll through here every now and then, so if you ever get a chance, ask your congressperson a thing or two about campaign finance. For $6 per voter, we could get this thing on track. It seems a tiny price to pay to get our government back. So wouldn't it be in your interest, and certainly in mine, to pay for our elections all together at one time? I'll put in my $6, for that is all it takes to kick the corporations out and democracy remake. So tell me, Congressperson, why wouldn't this work for you? It seems it'd give you time for all the work you have to do to reach some wise decisions, learn what you're talking about, instead of raising money day in and day out. Yeah, they roll through here every now and then, so if you ever get a chance, ask your congressperson a thing or two about campaign finance. For $6 per voter, we could get this thing on track. It seems a tiny price to pay to get our government back.